So since the COVID-19 outbreak, we need to discuss. So since the COVID-19 outbreak, millions more people have applied for universal credit and have learned some of the realities of dealing with the DWP. And at the same time, the government has brought in temporary measures that campaigners have been campaigning for years, such as increasing the amount claimants get, and also temporarily stopping job centre appointments and sanctions. At the same time, the DW staff have been moved over to work on universal credit, and now the customer service is better than ever. It's improved a lot. But however, people on legacy benefits have not had any increases to their weekly amounts, even though disabled people have had big increases to their expenditures due to COVID-19. So disabled campaigners were also alarmed by comments from Labour's new Shadow Secretary of State and Work Pensions, Jonathan Reynolds, suggesting that those who work should be entitled to more from the social security system than those who don't, which doesn't seem fair. So the fundamental problems with universal credit, which was highlighted in 2018 by the United Nations Rapporteur on Extreme Poverty, Philip Alston, they haven't changed. Philip Alston identified these, and DPAC continues to demand that universal credit is stopped and we want it scrapped. So we've got a lot to talk about this evening. So I really hope you enjoy what we're going to talk about. So this half of the meeting, we're going to talk about the problems with universal credit and what trade unions are doing, as well as the research that is being carried out to get us a better understanding of how the current situation around the social security system is or isn't working. But can I just remind speakers that we've got a lot of people to fit in, so can everybody make sure that they stick to their time, please? And if you want to ask any questions for individual speakers, you can post that in the comment system, the comment section, wherever you're watching. So now I'd love to introduce Gail Ward, and she's from the Northeast DPAC group, and also the Hand to Mouth project. So I'm going to pass over to Gail now.
Thank you, Latoya. Yes, where do we begin? Of course, everybody wants universal credit stopped and scrapped. It's an absolute carbuncle, and if anything, COVID-19 has taught us that, where workers and claimants alike are now feeling the real pinches of what it's like to live through a pandemic. Some of the issues that are arising, the online application alone is discriminatory, although the DWP today have launched a new accessibility form. So, you know, there are ways now where it's more accessible, whereas up until now, it wasn't that. It wasn't so. What they failed to acknowledge or even compute is the lack of affordable internet connection or phones, or some people don't even have a computer. And that can be really, you know, restrictive in application. Also, many people don't know this, but the journal can be altered retrospectively. So for instance, you know, a work coach can type something into a computer, and if they've made an error, they can then go back and alter it, whereas that can confuse the claimant, and it also erases anything that the claimant may have replied to or the previous message. So I would suggest to claimants, payments and messages, photo them, screenshot them. The Verify system, we all know, was an absolute disaster, and you can't guarantee that the documents get through. or they've been entered correctly, and the system sometimes crashes, and therefore the claims are closed. The claimant commitment. There are some good work coaches out there, but they are few and far between, and a lot of them tend to be quite arbitrary in the way it's administered. Terminally ill patients, of course, they are also now getting a better option because previously it was decided that they needed a DS 1500, which is a form that a consultant gives a patient to say they're terminally ill. That enables a fast track, but those that haven't got a DS 1500 now can be relied upon that they will contact your consultant or your middle nurse, and you will be prioritised. Residency testing. Now, there's 2 residency tests, and these tests, some people pass the first one and don't get past the second post, so therefore they find themselves not in receipt of benefit. One of the most horrific things is the rape clause. All that does is reintroduce trauma from the patient and the claimant. One thing that should never have even been included. And of course, the 2-child cap and the benefit cap are also causing massive debt. And as you've noticed recently in the press, Labour and a few other MPs have all been shouting from the rooftops over this. The other problems, obviously, is the tax credits phone line, absolutely long waits. Some people are waiting days before they can actually get through, if they get through at all. The childcare provision is a bit arbitrary as well, because obviously it has to be a registered childminder, and you've got to foot the bill up front before you take it in to see your work coach, who will then authorise payment for you to get that back. I mean, there's not many people that, on average, childcare, there's not that many people who've got 1,200 quid in the bank for a week, you know. School meals and uniform grants, that have also been difficulties in administering those. Hardship is often denied. Most often, after your initial advance on universal credit, they will do anything to gear you towards borrowing on friends, family, or wherever else, somewhere else, as long as it's not from them. Another big problem that many welfare advisors have encountered is the appointee, or explicit consent, as they call it, and where you have to nominate an appointee. That alone can take 7 days to approve, and if your appointee is on holiday, it's often difficult to change. So again, that's another one. We've had problems with rent and housing benefit through the DHP, which is the discretionary housing payments. They are often denied, and you really have to dig in tooth and nail for those. One thing that COVID has taught us is that those on contributory benefits, SMI is not included. SMI is a supported mortgage interest. It's only available to means tested people. So, you know, that is going to be a real killer for a lot of people, because it means they've got to go to the mortgage company or try and raise the money to pay the rent somewhere else. Well, the mortgage somewhere else. Alarming rise in debt is also that the advances should be free, not loans. The minimum income floor is causing many problems during the COVID crisis, so that needs to be lowered. The alternative payment arrangements, there's issues around proof of need. So, you know, that can be quite traumatic in itself. We know that there's some of the phone lines, there's not enough staff due to sickness or mental health problems of their own, particularly call centre staff, but obviously, and JCP staff, they are feeling it as well. Their staffing levels are low, although hopefully that will improve because they're planning to reopen. But there's often conflicting advice given to claimants, and this really needs to be addressed, because you know, we're seeing lots of people who've been told what, and it's just not like that at all. And assessments weights, obviously they're better at the moment due to COVID, because they've been suspended, but you know, that's it really. These assessments will start to kick in again now. The assessors are disliked by the DWP and judiciary staff just as much as the claimants, to be frank. And when you look at supporting independent scheme, they're only processing urgent cases. Otherwise, it's a very, very long wait because due to a reduced service. And finally, the cost of appeals and mandatory reconsideration. The costs of those are costing more than administering the benefit itself. So I would ask everybody, whether you're a worker or whether you're a claimant, on legacy benefit or on universal credit, get behind a campaign and start shouting from the rooftops and say, enough is enough. We're not going to take this anymore. It's time to hold the government to account. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Gail. Thank you. And next I'd like to introduce Charlotte Hughes from Ashton under Lyme. And she blogs as the poor side of life and writes for the Morning Star. And we're so delighted that Charlotte can join us because she's recently been very ill with the coronavirus. So welcome, Charlotte.
Thank you. Apologies for your appearance. It's the first time I've spoken to any human being for a long time, so I'm sorry. We were a pilot area for universal credit, so we've had it a long time now. And most of the things I'm going to talk about are basically the same as what Gail was bringing up there. The fact that once you are on that foot, start to claim universal credit, you are immediately placed into more debt and more dependent on family and friends if you're lucky enough to have them. Many people have gone to loan sharks to try and relieve the cost, the cost of living, and just can't cope with it. As I believe, and many others believe, that the whole system was set up to fail us, really. It wasn't set up with our needs in mind. You can't fix it. It's just horrendous. It's horrendous for the workers and it's horrendous for the claimants. And it actively discriminates. There's no lies about that. It really does. We've got to call the universal credit already lowers your income. So once you're on universal credit, your income already gets lower if you've been on a benefit before that, say income support. And so you've got to come across a lower income as well as a 2-child cap, as well as a benefit cap. You're absolutely knackered, I know people that were quite well off before and, driving cars and everything now, and now they're dependent on food parcels every week. So it's really, really bad. As far as, in my opinion, universal credit was created to destroy the welfare state. There's no beans about it, as long with the NHS, the privatisation of the NHS, because they didn't really want us to really live, did they? They want to punish us for everything that we do. And there's a lot of reasons why people that I speak to struggle. And the main reasons is they can't get onto their accounts because the passwords are too complicated to remember sometimes. They haven't got the internet access. They might have a phone, but it's going to be a really old one that doesn't have the internet. And while we've had COVID or COVID-19 going around, they've not been able to get out to job searches or anything. I've had people come to me during this period saying, I've just had a message from my work coach that I am going to be sent for a medical assessment soon. So what Gail said is right there. They're starting to kick in again now, these assessments, so people have to be wary of it. Most of the people that we speak to, dependent on food parcels, are usually on universal credit. Some are still on some legacy benefits, but they're moving over now. Sanctions are a massive part, and they're going to come back into place soon. And ESA and PIP review periods, where they're appealing or they're taking it to a mandatory reconsideration. And people are just being starved. They feel like they're being attacked from all ends. You know, they just don't know what to do about it. Therefore, a lot of people want to hide their heads and just disappear and want to hide from the problems. And the problem is that most it's the rent, so they'll get the money, they'll get a loan off the DWP, and they'll get some food with it because they've not ate for weeks properly, and they'll forget about the rent, and then they'll get made homeless, and that's what it's like. It's just awful. There isn't enough support for them, and why, like what Gail said, that money, they should be allowed to have some money as an advance like we used to get. You know, most of these people I speak to, they pay the taxes, they pay the national insurance. In fact, all of them have. So why can't they get the money that they deserve, you know, to live on? Instead, it's taken away from them by the government, who don't care and don't give a toss about it. And then when people are trying to get through to advisors on the telephone lines and that, it's very, very hard. You've got to have credit first, haven't you? And it's just impossible sometimes. One person will be told something by one advisor, then they'll get told another thing by another advisor, and they just don't know where they're turning. They don't know, you know, and of course, places have been shut now. They've got nowhere really to go. And that's a massive problem. And the journals are as well. People are getting sanctioned from months and months ago that they didn't know about, you know, and that's really hard, that. And when the DWP alters it, that's just wrong as well. You know, what Gail says, there needs to be a complete shutdown of that. They shouldn't be able to just come back and do what they want to it. You know, a new post should be a new post, not an edit for an old one. It's just awful. It's actually changed the rhetoric though, hasn't it? Because in the past, it was they saw it as people just being unemployed or being disabled. We're all the scroungers, you know, and that was what a lot of the majority thought because of the press and the television and that. But now it's turned around because the people that were calling us scroungers are now actually seeing it, what it's really like. And they're saying, I don't know how I can manage like that now, Charlotte. And I said, well, you were telling us we could, you know. And I've got every sympathy with them, but they are seeing now what it's really like. And this is why they've improved it slightly, you know, because they've had no choice but to, really. And it's just awful. You've got school dinners, you know, they wanted to stop the free school meals, but now we've managed to get that back again. They're just trying to cut you at any angle, you know, and it's just really awful. And we've just got to keep plodding on with it, haven't we? You know, we've just got to keep campaigning. I mean, as soon as job centres are open, I'll be back outside again, and as well as joining DPAC and helping other people and that. But it's just awful. I mean, we can't give out enough food parcels when we hand them out. And I talked to another organisation and they can't give out enough. They handed out last week 162 food parcels. And they are good food parcels as well. But listen, 2 people do this, by the way, you know. And it's just horrendous. And you say it's all types of people now. It's not just one type, it's all sorts. Another thing to mention is the minimum income floor. That does need to be sorted out. That is really awful. That is having a dramatic effect on people's lives. And the childcare costs. How on earth can you pay up a month in advance? You know, you can't do. And not everyone has family to ask. So that's putting a lot of people out of work. You know, the government wants them to work, but then they can't go to work, can they? Because there's no one to look after the children. So, yeah, that's what I've got to say today. But it's really nice to speak to you all. And I'm sorry I'm not as good today. I've just not been well. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Charlotte. And now I'd like to introduce Fran Heathcote, who's the National President for the PCS Union.
Okay, thanks very much, and thanks for having me along this evening. I just set out a few of the issues we're currently grappling with. PCS campaigns for decent social security and a system that supports people, not one that grinds them down. And when the arguments around austerity started in 2010, we were very quick to articulate our alternative and the sort of system that our members could take a pride in delivering. But benefit cuts since 2010 have pushed 700,000 children into poverty, 2,000 2/3 of the children living in poverty live in a household where at least one parent or guardian works. If you're sick or disabled, you're twice as likely to live in poverty. And the introduction of fit to work assessments has led to a doubling in the number of attempted suicides by disability benefit claimants. The introduction of universal credit in 2013 included £2 billion in cuts to tax credits and to work allowances. Food bank use, rent arrears and evictions rose very fast in areas where universal credit was rolled out. In 2013, a major report commenced into the impact of conditionality, carried out by a number of universities and funded by the Economic and Social Research Council. The Welfare Conditionality Sanctions Support and Behaviour Changes project took place all the way from 2013 to 2018 and is a really comprehensive analysis of the use of conditionality. The report concludes that conditionality is largely ineffective in helping people back to work. In its key findings, it calls for rebalancing away from sanctions and towards a more personalised employment support, and recommends a comprehensive review of the use of conditionality based on growing evidence of its ineffectiveness. Well, we in PCS have long argued that the use of sanctions does not work as a tool to incentivise claimants, and we have actively campaigned with other organisations, including DPAC, for the scrapping of sanctions and reform of the whole social security system. Unfortunately, though, as recently as the 2nd of June this year, the DWP's Universal Credit Director General informed the House of Lords Economic Affairs Committee that conditionality works. This assertion is based on his own research that he's promised to send to the committee and an evaluation that he hasn't yet completed. And the intention announced by the Secretary of State last week is still to reintroduce conditionality from the 1st of July. So we welcome the findings of the study and will use them to continue to campaign to make sure that the government and the DWP are forced to take heed. But we have to act to end the misery caused by their policy of too little carrot and too much stick in their attempts to get people back into work. Our members work in many roles within DWP, including delivery of universal credit. They themselves understaffed and underpaid, low pay in the civil service, meaning that 40% of those that process universal credit are also entitled to claim it. And then, of course, we were hit by the crisis, by the coronavirus. The current number of new universal credit claims stands at nearly 3 million just since lockdown began. And further austerity and even the potential for depression is now openly being discussed within the government. We have added our union's name to the call by MPs to raise the rates of both legacy benefits and universal credit. A report by the Parliamentary Work and Pensions Select Committee published today says that the rates of older benefits has to be raised to provide help for millions who have not yet moved on to UC and who are struggling to meet the inescapable cost imposed by the pandemic. The report on the DWP's response to the outbreak finds that the pandemic has left huge numbers struggling to cover the cost of essential items, with some disabled people particularly hard hit by increased costs of care and rising food prices. We have long called for the complete reform of the benefits system, and COVID-19 has highlighted just how important that is. Before the pandemic, we made clear that the benefits system isn't fit for purpose, and that UC has been a disaster for both claimants and staff, with too many of the vulnerable, especially the disabled, left destitute. The crisis has given many members of the public their first taste of the benefits system, as Charlotte was just describing, and with more businesses set to fold, many more will experience firsthand the inadequacies of the system and how you simply cannot survive on it. Office closures like the DWP's people and location strategy mean a reduction in experienced staff, but we believe that job centres should be an important asset. They should be, especially in a deprived area, not just a place for claimants and staff to feel demoralised. So the crisis is now forcing the DWP to rethink, because it needs more estate and more office space, not less. We desperately need more staff. We demanded 20,000 staff, but DWP's own executive team told us this week that if all claims had been fully processed, in order to maintain the benefit system, they, by their own admission, needed an additional 31,000 staff, as well as offices to house those staff in to observe social distancing. So they really do need a complete overhaul of their thinking. Universal credit was already beset with problems before the crisis, with widespread calls for it to be scrapped. The crisis has only further demonstrated what is now needed is the biggest and most united campaign of opposition from all of us about what is wrong and a clearly set out vision of the sort of system we want to see. And we've been meeting shadow ministers to articulate our ideas and put forward our alternative. We've set out a socialist vision for social security, a system where nobody falls into poverty through unemployment or disability and nobody is forced to choose between heating and eating. We have to have a radical overhaul of social security that puts an end to 0 hours contracts, unsustainable jobs, and recognises the need for significant investment in staff and training, delivering a properly resourced service from within the public sector and not from those trying to make a profit out of it. The austerity argument has now been lost. After nearly a decade of cuts, people want to see investment in public services. We have a moral duty to look after everybody in society, especially those that rely on the welfare state. We in PCS argue for decent social security and seek to coordinate the biggest joint campaign possible for a system that our members can truly take pride in delivering. And never now has that been more important. So we're asking you to join us. Thank you very much for listening and pleased to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Fran. And now I'm going to introduce Dave Allen, who is representing the TUC Disabled Workers Committee, and he also chairs the Committee for Disabled Workers on Unite the Union. The Unite the Union.
Thank you, Chair. That's correct. My name's Dave Allen and I'm Chair of the National Disabled Members Committee in Unite the Union, and I also sit on the TUC Disabled Workers Committee. And we've heard, first of all, Gail and Charlotte talk about the horrors of universal credit, and we've heard Fran speak about how her members have to work in managing such a disgraceful benefit system. But I hope to talk a little bit tonight, comrades and friends, about how the movement can fight back. But before I do, I'm just going to have to mention for a moment that this morning I participated in the funeral of a great friend and colleague of virtually everyone on this webinar tonight, the late, great Sean McGovern. Sean is an irreplaceable colleague and comrade. He was unique in being able to bridge the gap between DPOs, disabled activists, and the trade union movement. And we're all going to miss him greatly. But if we talk about how we can fight back, don't forget, comrades, we have had victories. Atos ruled the day they ever heard of universal credit, and they couldn't wait to get away from it fast enough. So that's just one example. I've spoken about Sean. Sean and I worked very closely as a team in Unite and in the TUC. Don't forget, just a couple of years ago, the whole movement's policy was not to scrap universal credit, but to pause and fix it. And it didn't take long to get unanimous agreement. Sean and I, first of all, got Unite the Union to agree that we change from pause and fix to stop and scrap. We sent a motion to the TUC Disabled Workers Conference, which was unanimously agreed, and then forward on to the TUC Congress, where again, it was unanimously agreed. So in the space of a few months, we moved our union and the whole of the TUC to having a position of stopping and scrapping universal credit. We then went on to meet with Margaret Greenwood, who at the time was the Shadow Secretary of State for Work and Pensions. We persuaded the Labour Party to put in their manifesto the abolition of universal credit. We were so confident that we were on the verge of ending it. Unfortunately, the result of the general election in December has put us back to square one. But we don't give up. This pernicious benefit system can be beaten. So one of the things that we in Unite have done, we've sent a motion to the TUC. Now, this is specifically about the Tory government's decision just after coronavirus took place to relieve the duties on local authorities to look after disabled people, to relieve them of some of the duties. We have sent a motion calling for a campaign against that and to set up a conference of action consisting of trade unionists, disabled activists and DPOs to come together, to join together in a joint strategy of how to take the next level of the fight against universal credit. So I have a meeting next month with Marcia de Cordova, who was one of us. She's a disabled woman. She was a member of the National Disabled Members Committee. She was a member of the TUC Disabled Workers Committee. She is now the Shadow Secretary of State for Women and Equalities. So she will be meeting with us to decide how we can work together to do that. So there is a potential strategy. We in the trade union movement, we as disabled activists, and we in the DPOs must come together. We have put the framework for that together. We must join, we must fight, we must come together and fight this Conservative government and the universal credit. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Dave. And next I'd like to introduce Jaimini Mehta. She's a clinical psychologist and who has recently researched into the impact of conditionality and sanctioning on disabled people in the work-related activity group of employment and support allowance, the ESA for short.
Sorry, I think I was on mute and talking. I just wanted to say hello to everyone. I think what some of the speakers have talked about prior to me speaking links quite well with the research that we had completed. So this research was completed with Inclusion London, which is a DDPO, and we looked to research and interview disabled people who were in the ESA RAG group on their experiences of conditionality specific to the RAG group and also sanctioning. What we did was we completed qualitative research and there were quite a few number of different themes that emerged from that piece of work. I'm just going to run through them as quickly as I can, and I'm happy to discuss if anyone has any questions following this. So one of the themes that we noticed was looking at the ESA RAG group, and there seemed to be quite a split among participants, that some people found it helpful because it gave them a sense of time to get well. Other people found it to be quite unhelpful. We named this theme the good, the bad and the ugly, because they felt it was a convenient way to get people off benefits and to try and move people into different categories that were felt to be less helpful, or to push people into work when they were not ready to, or when there were too many barriers still that needed to be addressed. One of the other themes that also emerged was that the ESA RAG and universal credit system and the assessment process felt quite complicated and complex and really quite inconsistent and difficult to understand. The second theme that we found was one called ruled by conditionality. So this drew on some ideas around, I suppose, neoliberal ideology. So one of the sub-themes was beat the competition, promote yourself. That was one of the direct quotes from one of the participants, that there was this real strong narrative around competition and how you can be better than your counterparts, rather than working together. There were also concerns around something that we termed psychocompulsion. So when participants felt that they didn't want to rock the boat, so those who were in receipt of ESA RAG did not want to worry the authorities or their coaches or the assessors. So they would be extremely compliant, but in essence losing their voice and their sense of autonomy and their ability to make decisions. And then the other sub-theme was also around feeling under control. So the sense that Big Brother is constantly watching, and that brought very much a sense of anxiety. So this constant state of anxiety and feeling really quite unsafe. We also looked at sanctions and suicidality. That was the third theme. So we spoke to people who had lived experience of sanctions and what that does to their mental health. One of the quotes is, when your mental health disappears overnight. And there were some quite really upsetting stories, but these are the lived experiences of people. And then the other side of that was people who haven't been sanctioned but who live in constant fear of it. So this kind of very black and white, thin line that people are constantly trying to balance. But the impact that has on someone's mental health. The other theme was the importance of relationships. So some of the participants talked about work advisors and having a good relationship. We were able to explore what that meant. What was a good relationship? What did it work like? How was it that they felt heard and listened to? But then some of the other participants did talk about that there were some relationships where work coaches or the assessors did not quite understand them, or really quite difficult relationships. And a lot of those discussions were based in the context of history and communities and what people know about the welfare state and how it sits in that historical context. We were able to think about adaptation and defences as well. That was one of the other themes. So one of the quotes was, "I'm an adult, I am capable." And this came from a sense of some participants talking about a sense of disrespect when they saw their work coaches, a sense of disrespect when they are made to complete work diaries and submit how they spent their time. There was a lack of connection with staff and they felt like they were infantilized. So in terms of the assessments, asking if they could kind of wash themselves and dress themselves, and that sense of, the human connection was lost. So there was no room to acknowledge people's life experiences, their strengths, their achievements. There was also the sub-theme of feeling like there was a lack of security when being in receipt of the ESA RAG, that if someone is made to go into work, that also feels very insecure. And some people so another direct quote is, "I'm a bit of a lost cause." So that sense of being very split off from the majority of society, some of the kind of the negative terminology that you hear in the media being internalized by participants, and what that does to their sense of self, to their confidence. Lots of people talked about having panic attacks on a daily basis. There was another theme around power in politics as well, where we were able to think about the kind of capitalist ideology and narrative that's quite dominant, how politics fits, there's a very different political agenda and how that fits, and thinking about divide and rule, that might be one of the agendas, and creates social divisions in society. I think it was quite helpful to hear Dave talking about fighting back. That was one of the themes that we named, and we said that was a theme of fighting back. So this unity and standing side by side with others, it brought about imagery of a battle, the kind of camaraderie, thinking about cooperating for the common good, being politically aware how it has changed individuals, and who they have found supportive, and what people have found supportive. And then the final theme was around workplace values. So trying to build a different narrative of what work is, that actually there's a lot of low paid precarious work, and actually what does work look like, thinking about barriers to employment and to work, and what was important to people about employment and from work, that it wasn't necessarily about fitting into the kind of 9 to 5 competitive nature of it. There were different aspects that were important to people. Thank you.
Thank you, Jay. And now I'd like to introduce Kate Summers, who is a researcher at the London School of Economics, who has come to tell us about a new project that she's involved in, looking at COVID-19 and universal credit. And I'm very excited to hear about it.
Great, thanks very much, Latoya. Thank you very much for having me here this evening. It's great to talk to you all. So yeah, my name's Kate Summers. I work as a researcher at the London School of Economics, and the reason I've been asked to speak here this evening is to give a brief overview of a large-scale new research project that I'm involved in, that's looking at how the working age social security system copes with, or maybe doesn't cope with, the COVID-19 crisis. So what I'm going to do is just briefly outline what that project looks like. I'm then going to also briefly outline some of the key things we're interested in looking at as a research team. I think it's reassuring, but also worrying that some of the things we think are likely to be challenges for the social security system have already been raised by other speakers this evening. And then we're actually releasing our first initial findings this week. And I just want to end by giving you a very little insight, small insight into one of those findings. So the research project, what does it look like? It's a large scale project that has 3 main components. I should say it's funded by the Economic and Social Research Council, which is public money, but we are independent researchers. So it's us as independent researchers working on it. Along with myself, it's a team of colleagues who are also based at the University of Kent, the University of Leeds, and the University of Salford. And yeah, the project has 3 main components. It involves a big survey of over 6,500 claimants, both new claimants who have started a claim since the coronavirus crisis, but then also claimants whose claims started before the crisis, who are then finding themselves making and maintaining their claim during the crisis. The second part of the project involves in-depth local case studies. So we've got 4 case studies that we're doing where we're looking at the situation in Salford, in Leeds, in Newham, and in Thanet in East Kent, where we want to look at how the sort of local systems of support are working, or the challenges also they're facing to support people who are in contact with the social security system. So that's not just the government systems there, but also third sector and grassroots organisations, but then also informal support like family and friends that we know play such an important role in kind of giving support to one another with navigating the social security system. And then the third and final part of the research involves in-depth interviews with people who are claiming social security. And so claiming either universal credit, but other working age benefits as well. So JSA, ESA, tax credits, so the legacy benefits we want to look at as well. We're going to talk to those people twice, and it's 80 people that we're talking to. So we're talking to people right now, and then we're going to revisit them in about 9 months' time to see how things have changed, or how things have sort of happened for them across that time, so we can look at sort of change and continuity that's happened. I'll just very briefly outline some of the things that we are particularly interested in looking at, and some of the things that we think are likely to be sort of big challenges for the social security system that we're quite concerned about. So one thing we're looking at across those three kind of packages of work is income adequacy or maybe inadequacy. So how are people coping with the amount of money they're getting from the social security system? We're also particularly interested in this kind of, we've got this big new group of claimants, some of whom maybe haven't got experience of claiming social security before, but then we've also got a kind of longer standing group of claimants who are in this whole new environment of the coronavirus crisis and maintaining their claim. And we want to know about the experience of both of those groups. We're particularly concerned, for example, about the digital nature of claiming now and what that means for people who find it, for various reasons, more difficult to access their claim because it's all gone online, because it's all much more distant. What does that mean for some groups of claimants? What are the challenges there? What does policy need to do to change for the better? And I think just the third thing I'll kind of highlight as something we're interested in is support that people are receiving at this time. Again, because of social distancing, because of various pressures that organisations and groups are under, we know that the sort of support people can receive is changing quite a lot. We also know that kind of family and friends are under different sorts of pressures at the moment, and we know what an important kind of role they play. So how is that kind of burden being shared or maybe not shared? Who's really having to kind of take up that burden of kind of making a claim, maintaining a claim? What does that look like in this new context we find ourselves in? I think just to finish, the last thing that I'll briefly say is that, so we're currently conducting those interviews that I was describing. That's all kind of going on right now. I should also say the aim of the project is, as we're carrying it out, we want to produce findings quickly and get them out there as quickly as possible, because we want to be influencing policy and basically putting policymakers in touch with the experiences that claimants are going through kind of as live as possible, hopefully so that we can influence them to take that on board and respond in how things are being designed. That's our hope, at least, and that's what we're trying to do with the project. So the first set of early findings are coming out later this week, and that's from our first round of that big survey that I described. We're going to be releasing findings about that. And so I'll just end by giving you a quick snapshot of one of our findings from that. So one thing we asked people was whether they were looking for work. And so this is asking 6,500-ish claimants who are receiving either UC or legacy benefits. And as I'm sure many of you know, their conditionality requirements have been suspended. So there's nothing coming from DWP that's sort of pushing people to be searching for work. But we found that the people who had lost their job, the majority of people said they were looking for work, which we thought was pretty surprising in some ways, because of the sort of nature of the labour market at the moment, the obvious pressures that people be under. But in some ways, it's not surprising at all, right? Because actually what you find, even when there isn't conditionality, people are looking for work, and people don't need to have sort of necessarily a stick approach, would be part of my interpretation of that, to be looking for work. The people that weren't looking for work had good reasons not to be. So these were people who had a disability or a long-term health condition, or people who had childcare commitments. So I think already we're kind of finding things and we're learning things about the social security system, maybe that are very familiar to many people listening, including things about conditionality, and again, kind of adding to the evidence of how partial that is as a tool for helping people in the world of work. And we hope that we'll continue to be able to sort of find systematic evidence to influence the policy debate. I'll stop there. Thank you very much for your time.
Hello, welcome back. So now I would like to read an update from the Commission on Social Security that was launched last year. So the Commission on Social Security, an update for DPAC. So next month, the Commission for Social Security will publish proposals for ethical benefits. The Commission is a project led by experts who have experience, who have personal knowledge of the benefit system. And the co-chairs are Deepak, Ellen Clifford, and Ellen Morrison. She's acting. And Nick Phillips, who's London Unemployed Strategies. So last year, the Commission made a call for solutions which asked people to submit their ideas. They had over 1,000 responses on how they could improve social security. So the Commission considered all of the ideas that were submitted, and the next step is that next month the Commission will publish proposals for a better benefit system. And that includes a plan for replacing universal credit. So there'll be a public consultation on the proposals, and Deepak's views on how to engage disabled people in the public consultation will be greatly welcomed. So if you'd like any further information about the Commission, please contact Ellen Morrison after today. Okay, so now we've had a few questions come in. So Sarah has submitted a question. She's from the Scottish Unemployed Workers Network. She says, I am concerned that the reporting on universal credit is separating out those who are claiming because of COVID-19 in opposition to those who were already on universal credit. So this is even reflected in the trade union calls for an improvement to universal credit while COVID-19 lasts. How can we cut across that? And that was a question for Dave.
Can you unfreeze my video, Chair, please?
Okay, yeah, fantastic.
Hi, thanks very much for that, Sarah. I mean, that's absolutely disgraceful, but we can't control reporting. It's like the deserving and undeserving poor that the press have a narrative of. What I can assure you is that those of us who are watching this tonight from the TUC Disabled Workers Committee have a meeting on the 30th of June. We will raise this matter. Anyone who's unemployed is unemployed and should receive the full support of the state. We're in a very difficult situation with coronavirus, and we have got to fight for all claimants, all our members, all people who are in receipt of benefit to get a living income in this period, and we will be fighting for that. But that's exactly the kind of thing that we can raise at this conference of action that we're hoping to call in the near future of trade unions, disabled activists and DPOs. So we're onto that, Sarah. Thanks very much for the question, and we'll do what we can.
Thank you, Dave. Okay, I've got another question. This is from Andy Mitchell in Somerset. And he's asked, how can we reach new people who are struggling with universal credit and how can we involve in our campaign? Charlotte, have you got something you'd like to say on this?
Hey, Andy. Well, it's easier than you think, really. You know, it is in a way, it could be a bit difficult, but really easy. I presume you've got friends, neighbours, people you can talk to. Start spreading the word like that. You know, start small. That's what we did. We started small, really small. You don't have to be out there all the time on the streets. You know, we've got leaflets we can give to you. You know, if you give me details, I can send the details of that to you. And just get out there. Just say to them, do you know anyone that's on that benefit? You know, do you know anyone that's struggling on it? You know, and educate yourself about it as well, which I'm sure you already are doing. But getting out there, while you're shopping if you can, or online. Online is amazing. You know, the internet is our world. We've got more control over that than they've got over us. So what we can do is talk to people online, the local community groups. You know, if you see someone having a problem, then, you know, try and intervene and suggest ways to help. Basically, it's being out there, either on the internet or either on foot, while you're shopping, while you're doing while you're at the doctor's or wherever you are. And also, I mean, you can just drop by the job centre and say hello to people. It's just it's just whatever you choose to do. But it isn't really that hard, honestly. Just start it at home on the internet, start talking to people. And before you know it, you'll have lots of people to talk to and lots of people who will listen to you, you know, and you'll get a lot of supporters. And it's just a way, start small, grow bigger, and you can do that. And how to get them involved, it's getting them to realise that they don't have to be outside to be involved, you know. It's a misconception. Like I said, online, it's just perfect, isn't it? You know, if you're on the internet and you've got a computer, you can do it. If you've not got the internet, you can talk to your neighbours as well, you know. So it's a way of involving them in campaigns. Also, I mean, sometimes campaigns might mean having to go somewhere. So, like divvying out, but who's got a car, then, you know, we can all car share and things like that, or sorting that out. So nothing seems as daunting as what you think it is. And things do tend to work out just for that, you know. And it's really good, and I'm really excited about what you're going to do, you know, because we need more people out there, either virtually or, you know, online, and it's so important. And we've got the one up on them at this. So we are the best at this. So you can do it, and honest to God, Andy, it's not as difficult as you find. Okay.
Thank you, Charlotte. So now we've got 2 more questions, and they're both for Fran. So one person who's asked a question is David Etherington. So Unite Community are organising a day of action against universal credit on the 15th of July. Asking, are PCS involved?
Yeah, hi David.
And we've got one more question as well.
Oh, yeah, go
on. So this is from Sarah Glynn. So she's asking, what's PCS's position on universal basic income? But just before I hand back over to you, Fran, just to let everybody know that the next meeting next Monday, DPAC's meeting next Monday, will be about universal basic income.
Okay, thanks very much. The first question, David.
Over to you, Fran.
Thank you. In terms of the day of action on the 15th of July, what usually happens is Unite contact us and we put out a joint statement, and we put out a statement to our members saying that this is a campaign we're supportive of. It's something that PCS fully supports, and that the campaign isn't aimed at targeting job centre workers, which is obviously something that you know, we need to reassure our members about, but is in fact aimed at changing the system and making improvements to it. So we get involved in any way that we can, really. If we're invited to speak, we speak. If we're invited, you know, obviously at the moment a lot of our members are observing the social distancing, but if we can get involved, we will. And if we're invited, we will always send a speaker. But equally, you know, if we have advance notice about it and exactly what it is that Unite Community want to organise, we'll work with them to make sure we get something out to our members in advance of it, to ensure that everybody is fully supportive of the campaign that's being run. In terms of Sarah's question, about universal basic income, I mean, the short answer is PCS doesn't currently have policy on UBI. We all of our policies are dictated by democratic means of putting them forward to the conference, and the instruction we've had regarding UBI is to explore further and to work with interested parties to explore further. We have some concerns about it, I think it's fair to say, and a number of those have also been expressed in the past by DPAC. I don't think I'd be saying anything, you know, different in terms of all of that. We have some concerns because it isn't just about the principle of having that basic income, it's about who determines what's a sufficient income to have, and of course we know that that answer will be the government, the Tory government, and so there are a number of there's quite a lot of nervousness, I think it's fair to say, around the idea of exactly how that would work. But our policy currently is to explore further and to talk to other interested parties. I know DPAC have organised an event to discuss it next week, which we hope to send somebody to and hope to send a speaker to, and where I think that issue can be discussed in a lot more detail than perhaps I can do justice to it tonight. But it is something that clearly we are continuing to explore, but we don't have a current policy in terms of whether we support it or not, just an exploratory mandate to find out more and to work with other interested parties. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Fran. So now we're going to have an access break. So we're going to stop and we're going to have a break, I think for about 20 minutes. So please come back for the second half. So we're going to start the second half meeting after then. So if people want to have a look, to have a new live stream, to have a look at our live streaming, that's on Facebook, at DPAC page and Twitter, YouTube. So just don't forget to come back after the break. So after 20 minutes, we'll see you then. Bye.